Dom here from Essential RC. Thanks for tuning in for another flight test. I have here version 2 of the FMS P-51 Reno racer. So it comes in 4 different schemes. I've got Blue Thunder 2, but it also comes in Dago Red, Voodoo and Miss America schemes as well. 1100mm wingspan, but despite it being that size, it has lots of scale, detail, an uprated power system for more speed, and functional flaps and retractable landing gear. So let's not hang around, let's take the components out of the box, let's see what we get. Okay, so here we go, everything unboxed, looks good. Not very many components, so this is going to go together really quickly. But let's look at the fuselage first. So we've got the motor already installed, so all we're going to have to do is to put on the 4-blade propeller, nice scale 4-blade prop with silver tips, and the spinner, easily done. Let's take off the canopy, and you can see in here that we've got the Reflex version 2 gyro stabilization system, which has 3 modes: off, optimized, which is to reduce gusts, you know, the effect of gusts and wind and turbulence while you're flying. Works really well, worked really well on previous FMS models we've used, but we'll demonstrate those modes. You've got the cables coming out of the Reflex system that go into your receiver. You need a 7-channel receiver, so I'm going to be using, of course I'm going to be using my Radiomaster TX16S together with an Frsky X8R 8-channel receiver. You've got Velcro in there and a securing strap for your lithium polymer battery. Then we've got the wing, and you can see here we've got a junction box with cables out of it. The aileron one will go into the Reflex system, and then you've got one for the gear and flaps. So this clever little junction box reduces the number of channels you're going to need on your receiver, because you've got one cable effectively into your receiver for both the flaps and the ailerons and the landing gear. We're going to have to attach the horizontal stabilizer elevators with the spar, the joiner here. Then we've got a bag with some scale details in it and a USB cable to update the firmware on the setup for the model on the Reflex gyro system, but it's probably up to date anyway, so we probably won't have to do that. And that should be it. So this is going to take minutes to assemble. Let's do that now, and then we'll be down the flying field ready to fly for the first time. And here it is, assembly complete, and it's just ridiculously easy to put together. There's not a lot involved in putting this together. It's just screwing it together and gluing on a few scale details like the pitot tube there at the front of the wing. So there's only one little build tip, assembly tip, something that might not be obvious to a beginner. When you put the wing on, there are the cables, servo cables from the wing that you bring up. Now the aileron cable needs to go into the Reflex gyro here. There's already a lead coming out to go into your receiver, but the one that comes up from the wing into the fuselage is the one to go into here, obviously because you want the gyro to be controlling the ailerons when you've got that mode turned on, the modes turned on, the stabilized or optimized modes. But what I thought I might do now, and what I don't normally do, is cover setting up the radio. Now I'm not going to go through this step by step. There are some fantastic channels out there like Painless 360 and RC Video Reviews who do this really well and probably better than I could. So I'm just going to show you the different tabs on my setup for this P-51. So because you might pick up a few things if you're already an OpenTX Edge TX user, or if you're not, then you may be persuaded to go the Radiomaster TX16S route, because it is a fantastic radio. It's a fraction of the price of some of the premium radios that are out there. I think $200, $250. So it's not a lot of money, and it, you know, with the number of channels and functions it supports and it being multi-protocol, you might never have to buy another radio again after you've made that investment. So let's go through some of that radio setup now. So to start off with, setting up the model in the TX16S for the first time, I use the wizard. It gives you a great starting point. So to do that, hold down the scroller, model select. There are my current models, and I hold down the scroll wheel again and create model. It's a plane. The motor is going to be on channel 3. That's my default. Click this button here to go next. It's single aileron, so I click the scroll wheel, go back, and it's on aileron is on channel 1. Again, go next. Does it have flaps? Yes, it does. My flaps are actually on channel 6. So I've set that. Go next. 1 channel for elevator, 1 for rudder. That is correct. My sequence of channels is actually aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. So yes, elevator and is on channel 2. Rudder is on channel 4. And that is it. That is the basics. So scroll wheel, yes, all is well. Create the plane. Hit return, which is this button here, and there it is. Do return to get, and it's not even been named yet, model 43. So I'm not going to go through and fiddle with this. I will show you my completed model setup. But if I go into model here, then you will see it has on inputs, as I scroll across, it's set up aileron, elevator, throttle and rudder as inputs. Again, in mixes, no mixes specifically, but you can see that on flaps it's set up the SA switch by default here for flaps. I actually use SB. So I could, for example, change that very easily. Hold down the scroll wheel, go into edit, click, because I want to change that, and I could, you know, change that to SB if I wanted to. Play around with it, and you can learn OpenTX, EdgeTX very quickly. Now OpenTX, it's currently running OpenTX. EdgeTX is the latest version of the operating system. I've not moved to that for a number of reasons, but I will do in the future. Quite happy with OpenTX, even though it's frozen and not being developed any further. So that's how you do the basic setup with the wizard. Now if I come out of this and I go back to the model that I've set up, I can show you some of the things I've done here.
Throttle warning, switch warning, high rates, gear down, flaps up, 0 volts, low, battery, RF signal. Low.
I've added in a lot of audible alerts, and you know, when I change things, it tells me that I've done that, which is good, because you don't want to be looking down at your transmitter. So you can see here I've set up a timer that is actually going to start when I put the landing gear up, when I retract the landing gear. So I would taxi out, line up on the runway, go full throttle and take off, and when I flip the gear switch up here, it would start the timer, which you know, I will look down at occasionally, and actually I've programmed it every minute to read out how many minutes I've been flying, and that gives me a kind of a general indication of when I should land. I know maybe after 4, 5, 6 minutes of flying I should land. But interestingly, what I am doing for the first time is using onboard voltage telemetry being reported back to the transmitter. So I'm using a Frsky FLVS sensor, which I've got plugged into the smart port on my receiver, Frsky receiver, and then into that I've got the balance tap, the balance plug connected to that sensor, and that is reporting my voltage. And what I can also do is set up alarms so that when I go below a certain value on the voltage, it tells me that, and I know that I should be landing, that I'm running out of juice. But again, click on model. I've renamed, obviously, the model so I can differentiate it from others rather than just having the default name. I've set up this timer so it counts up. You might want to set something so it counts down, so you could set that to 5 minutes maybe, and when you click a button or put the landing gear up, it counts down and gives you an audible alert and maybe a countdown warning. I've got it on silent because I'm counting up. That's that. But if I scroll, one of the important things to point out is I'm using that Frsky receiver, that XR8 receiver, I think. So I'm using, this is a multi-protocol transmitter, so there are so many protocols that it supports. But you select multi on the internal RF board that's inside here, and I'm using Frsky X2 LBT EU. Now what I also did was flash the latest firmware onto the receiver. I like to do that with every new receiver that I get, so I'm sure that if there were any bugs, those will have been fixed. That's very easy to do. I won't cover that. Painless 360 and RC video reviews cover that procedure really well. Could do it if there's a real demand for it. It's quite an easy thing to do. Then I would put the receiver into bind mode. You power it up while you're holding down the button on the receiver with a little screwdriver. It'll flash, and then you do bind on here. Again, very easy to do. So once you've done that, then you should have your basic control surfaces working. If I go across, then you can see the inputs. And on that previous model I set up with the wizard, I just had a single line for each of those. But what I've added are rates on my rate switch.
Middle rates, low rates, high rates.
So you can see I've got SA up, SA middle and SA down for aileron on 100%, 66% and 30%, 33% of its full physical throw, and also added exponential. So if I just show you this and go into edit, you can see that its source is controlled by the aileron stick, 100% weight, but I've added 30% expo. So that at 30% expo wouldn't have been there by default, but I like the sensitivity to be quite soft in the middle of the stick, and that's going to be when I have SA up. Copy that line down for 66% and 33%, and also did the same for elevator and rudder. Didn't touch throttle, don't need to do that. Although the important thing, and I'm just thinking of things as I go along, it's important to calibrate the throttle on the speed controller. So the first time I go down the flying field, I'm going to plug in the battery and go full throttle and down on the throttle. And actually, I think that's the way that you do it, but I think that's the process for calibrating the throttle. As soon as you plug it in, you go up and down, and that allows the speed controller to record to know the values for going up, maximum and minimum on the throttle. So that's inputs, very easy. And then we move across to mixes. So on mixes, I've got aileron, elevator, throttle and rudder. Nothing interesting going on there. But then I've got flap. Now the interesting thing for flap is I want to have just a little bit of flap for takeoff, flap position 1, and then for landing I want more or less the maximum. So if I go into this, you'll see what I've done is I've associated it with a custom curve called FLP, flaps. It's on SB because that's my preferred flap switch up here, and I will show you that curve in a minute. Let's go back. What else to point out? Gear wouldn't have been there by default, so I know that on channel 6, because that's what I plugged the plug for out of the reflex gyro box into my receiver was channel 6, so I've used SF for that and labelled it gear. And then for the reflex system, it supports 3 modes, so I use channel 7 for that, plugged in that cable from the reflex system into channel 7 on my receiver, and I use 3-position switch SC for that, and you can hear it working there if I put it in that stabilized mode, I think, but the middle position on SC would be off, and that's how I generally take off and then go into optimized mode. Okay, outputs. This is where you can reverse channels and set minimax for channels. Didn't need to touch anything there, but this is my custom curve. So I set this up before associating that curve with the flap channel. So if I go into this quickly, I named it FLP. I set it as a 3-point curve. It's 5-point by default, and then set these these points by actually moving the switch and seeing where I wanted it while the model had the battery plugged in. Easy to do. Moving across, nothing on global variables, but here's an interesting one. This is the logical switch that I had to set up because I want to get a voltage alarm when I go below a certain voltage. Now I reckon I want 3.7 volts per cell, which I think is 14.8. If I'm not, you can correct me. But I know when I get to that voltage or go below that voltage, I want there to be an alarm. I use this SG here to cancel the alarm, because isn't that really annoying when you are flying and you get that low voltage alarm? It's going to tell me every 15 seconds, but I don't want it to tell me relentlessly while I'm on my landing circuit and on final approach. It could be quite annoying. So I've got a switch there, the SG switch, so it will only be active and telling me that when I've got the SG switch up. Moving across, all these special functions mostly relate to playing sounds or values. So for example, SF1 here, I want it to, when that L value L01 logical switch occurs, so when the voltage goes from the sensor goes below 14.8, it is going to play value cells, which is the sensor value, and it's going to do that every 15 seconds. Again, I'll be able, as I said previously, I'm going to be able to switch that off when I do SG down. I also want it to play an alarm, an alert, so it's going to, a lovely lady is going to say low battery when that happens, when it triggers that logical switch. Again, I want to have, I've got SG as well to reset the timer, and all these others are for playing tracks that are on the sound pack that is on here. So
middle rates, low rates.
So you can see it going between. I use SA switch, 3-position switch,
middle
for my
rates,
rate switch
high rates.
that I showed you, I set up earlier for my ailerons, elevator, rudder. That's nice, so I don't have to look down at the transmitter. I know what's going on. For gear up and gear down as well. For flaps up and flaps, the 3-position flaps as well. So it's kind of nice to get that audible alert that you flip a switch and it tells you that you've done the right thing, the thing you expected to do. No custom scripts. Here's the interesting thing for the sensor. So I've added in this sensor, which I'll show you an image of how it's plugged in. But when the first time you do it, it may not show up. So what you have to do is discover new sensors, and then it should show you the cells line here, and 16.56 volts is what it's showing on that current flight battery. And once you've got it recognized as a sensor, then you can use it in those previous screens like the logical switches here, but you have to discover that sensor first. The transmitter has to know about it before you can use it. I think that is it. So I hope that was a very quick spin through how I set up my radio. I don't think I missed anything out. Oh, maybe I missed out one thing here on this, where I set up that custom curve, didn't I, and associated the flap channel with that curve. But what I didn't show here was slow up. So when that's actually down, but when they deploy, when I put the flaps down, they go down slowly, so as to, you know, so as to call it. There's nothing worse than slamming in the flaps and then the aircraft, the P-51, kind of jumps, you know, as it reacts to you putting that much drag in because of the flaps. It's nice if you do it slowly. So I do that over 2 seconds. Going up, putting the flaps up, I don't really care about. Now it's reversed, so that's why it shows slow up is 2 seconds, but it's actually when the flaps go down. So anyway, I think that was the one thing I missed out. I hope that helps. I hope that helps anybody considering to go to OpenTX. I was a Spectrum user, used the DX18 Gen 1 Spectrum transmitter for many years, but I thought the price of Spectrum radios, the equivalent of this, absolutely ridiculous. You know, you're talking £800 plus. So this, I think, is an amazing value, and I won't be looking at doing anything different other than moving to Edge TX, because it's a constantly updated, well-maintained operating system, and this is OpenTX, and that, you know, it's been at least a year, and it won't be being upgraded anytime soon. So I hope that's really helped you. Now I'm excited to get down the flying field and fly the P-51 for the first time. Okay, so here we are down the flying field, ready to fly the P-51. The P-51 for the first time. It's a bit windy today, but that should make for some fast downwind passes. So let's get it in the air. Let's see how it flies.
Yep.
Thanks to Bob on camera. Gonna have to take off more or less towards us, Bob, because of the wind.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
I promise I'll move out. Try and move out of the way then.
all right, here we go. Just trimming it out, Bob.
Yeah. We won't say it's by camera work, we'll just say it's your trimming.
Yes, no problem. Wow, didn't need any trim.
Been blown over by the wind.
Going for a big loop, Bob.
Okay. It's somewhere. Oh, there it is. Oh, that's not hanging about, is it?
No. They're quite difficult to film, aren't they, when things
Yeah.
are this quick? Wow. It's on rails.
Yeah. It's, oops.
Just looks so good when you crank the wing over on a fast pass. Love it.
I missed out a lot of that one. We got the fly past.
You did, yeah.
Then it just went away.
They're the main things. It is hard to track it though. Slower pass. Whoa! Fast one. One more. Right, slowing it down.
Will it slow down?
I hope so. Actually, I'll do a gear pass, hold on. Nice slow pass, Bob, with the gear going down.
Yeah.
Going around.
Oh, well done.
Oh, yes!
Saved by the bell.
So there we go, that's the FMS P-51 Reno Racer, 1100mm wingspan running on a 4S2700 pack. I love those fast passes. Crank the wing over slightly, give the cameraman a good view, but it flies on absolute rails. And that second landing in a crosswind, absolutely fantastic with full flap. So that's my takeoff flap and my full flap. So I could even give it more full flap. So enjoyed that, I hope you did as well. Thanks for watching another flight test on Essential RC, but we'll be back with another one soon. You might want to subscribe. If you do, click the bell icon for notifications. But thanks to Bob on camera. He's got his own YouTube channel. The link for that is in the video description and the pinned comment. But we'll be back with another one soon. Thanks for watching. Bye. Whoa!